TNG turned the corner in Season 3. Enterprise turned the corner in Season 2. Voyager turned the corner into a ditch and fucking stayed there. And DS9, well, I guess we'll debate when exactly it turned the corner. I would argue it was pretty damn good right from the beginning. But folks, it is the Depths of DS9. We have Season 4 in the bag. What a fucking season of Star Trek. Very, very few duds. I can't wait to discuss this season because there's so much good shit. Terengel, sir, is joining me here. I am, of course, Captain Fist, your intrepid host. Brother, what does Season 4 mean to you on the whole?
It, I have to say, was incredibly solid.
Yeah.
Like you said, very few duds.
Let me put it this way. Like, if 3 was a pivot season for TNG, and if you want to say the end of Season 2 of DS9 was a little bit of a pivot point, with 3, and we talked about this in our Season 3 in review, being sort of, that being the real moment where the show turned the corner, all together, then I think Season 4 is the solidifying season. It's where now, instead of just having a bunch of really good episodes that all pull in the same direction, now the entire thing is consistently excellent from beginning to end.
Yes, I would call Season 4 the foundation. We've laid the foundation as a staging area for what takes off in Season 5.
Yeah.
That's how I would describe it.
In a lot of ways, the show is in its stride. I think it is fair to say we have introduced now all the major elements that are going to be important. Really, there's only one major element, and that comes at the tail end of the show.
Oh, yeah.
That is not present yet, but every other element, from the Dominion to the ongoing drama with Odo and his people, we've even introduced not only the Jemadar, but now we have Weyoun, who's going to be a serious factor here. We've, of course, established the Mirror Universe as an ongoing concern, unfortunately, and we also are deep into the Maquis arc, and it's taken a really, really dramatic turn. And of course, we opened the season on the spectacular Way of the Warrior, and so the Klingon stuff that's going to resolve next season is front and fucking center. So what would you say, I would put this question to you. What would you say is your favorite arc of the season? Because now in Season 4, if you want to say this is the solidifying season, one of the things that solidifies it is the ongoing arcs. We are now not just in this, oh, let's be like TNG and have these one-off episodes. No. We're really, we're exploiting the fact that DS9 is the most serialized Star Trek series. And we're not shrinking from that. So there's several ongoing arcs that are happening concurrently over the course of this season. The big one being, of course, the Changelings have infiltrated Earth and all the major powers of the Alpha Quadrant. The Maquis is a major occurrence in this season. I mean, and of course the ongoing conflict with the Dominion in connection with the Changelings. What's your favorite of all these? What works best in Season 4 and what works best in the whole of DS9?
Well, clearly it's the stuff going on with the Mirror Universe.
Obviously.
That's the cream of the crop.
That's the
brother.
shit with the stakes, goddammit!
I would personally say I love the stuff with the Founders and Odo.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. You're getting deep into lore, and lore is what Deep Space Nine does best. It's the show that built out the universe of Star Trek. Yes.
Most of the stuff in Star Trek Online is from DS9.
You're welcome.
It's true, though. Not only did it invent races and powers and what have you of the Star Trek universe of its own, but it took the ones that had already been established, Klingons, Romulans, Vulcans, all that stuff. Not so much the Vulcans, but everybody else. and really flesh them out. The Klingons get fleshed out in a way in DS9 that they were not in TNG.
Yeah, in TNG, I think you got 4, maybe 5 Klingon episodes that were okay.
We get 2 Klingon episodes this season. No. God, we get like 4 or 5, don't we? This season.
I mean, if you're counting the 2-parter.
No. I'm thinking we got Way of the Warrior. That's 1, and that's a 2-parter, but we'll consider that one.
Sword of
Kahless,
which is excellent.
Sons of Moog, unfortunately. Rules of Engagement.
Absolutely.
The fucking courtroom shit. So yeah, that's 4 major Klingon episodes right in the heart of this season. You could tell this was going to be the Klingon season. And, of course, you introduce the major new element on the show. And who would that be, Darren?
Worf. Everyone's favorite Klingon.
He gets on the show, and how do you feel Worf actually gels?
I think he fits in rather well.
He does. I don't think he's hit his stride yet.
No. I love that they go out of their way to make him adapt to the station, and like they said, or like Worf said in that one episode, maybe it is all of you who will have to adjust to me.
Yeah, I love that line, and it's so emblematic of Worf's entire time on Deep Space Nine. Worf gets to be so much cooler of a character here than he did on TNG, because, I mean, on TNG, he's the security guy, he's the guy that barrels fall onto, break his fucking...
Insert GIF here.
And we'll just pretend that the whole Deanna Troi thing didn't even fucking happen.
Apparently not.
Apparently the writers did. Did you notice that? He comes in. Of course, at the beginning of next season, we're going to get a little bit more into his love life. And Deanna Troi, once again, nowhere to be found. Boy, the writers dropped that shit like a hot potato.
Holy crap.
It's crazy how TNG Season 7 is kind of like this mass hallucination that everyone forgets except for the finale. It's weird. Because it's not bad, it's just not as good as the previous ones. It's weird that way. But DS9 Season 4 is as good as anything on TNG. This is great fucking stuff. So let's hit the highlights. Of course, when we hit the end of this episode here, we're going to talk our favorite episode, our least favorite. Actually, you know what? Let's just open up with it, because that'll give us an opportunity to talk about our favorite episodes, talk about the highlights of the season. So, let's start with you. What is your favorite episode of the season? What works best?
This is so difficult. There are a lot of good episodes.
Dude, you remember, while we were covering this shit, it was like, dude, it's just one banger after another. They just keep coming.
It's a tough decision. Like, I'm torn between at least 3. The Visitor, where you have Tony Todd and Avery Brooks just at their best.
Oh man, I totally forgot that was even this season.
For me, what it tapped into was we had this father and son relationship, and you know, it validated it in a big way. The love between those 2 characters and between the 2 actors, you know, I mean, they were very, very close. It examined that father and son dynamic beyond death in a very powerful way. I mean, and besides, I mean, I know some people liked it because it gave a glimpse into the future and you got to see, you know, various characters and different guises kind of, or in different positions in the history, but more than that, I just thought, you know, it was a very emotional show, and every now and then the franchise and all the series and all the different series are able to pull that off in a way that it becomes very intimate, very real, very universal, sad, sweet, emotional stories, and it's amazing how popular that show is.
I really liked Starship Down.
Great.
The concept of being stuck inside of a nebula, everything's not working, people are injured, you don't know what's looming outside.
I loved the character interaction stuff on that episode. It was. We got deepening kind of... We got to see the crew in a survival situation. Kira gets to connect to Cisco. We got, like, the only believable relationship stuff with Dax and Julian. The only time they kind of worked, and unfortunately we're about to ruin that, but, like, dude, it was just... That's what worked. It worked from a survival movie kind of... standpoint, like a Titanic sinking sort of an idea.
Poseidon Adventure.
Yes, and it worked from a personal relationships drama episode standpoint as well. I fucking absolutely love that episode. I agree with you on that one. That is one of the highlights that I always think of in the sort of mid-season period.
And then, of course, Sword of Kahless.
Oh.
Get so much great Klingon stuff there. You establish this legend, which I love, and of course it has Core in it.
Yes.
But yeah, those three are definitely my top three right there. From an acting standpoint, I'd have to put Visitor at number 1, Starship down. There's just too much going on in that episode for it to not to be number 2.
Right.
And Sword of Kahless would be 3rd.
Oh, man. There's so many winners here.
Yeah, there are.
For me, fuck. This is tough. If I have to pick just one, it's Way of the Warrior.
Okay.
Which is one of the greatest two-parters in the history of Star Trek. It is a movie.
Hands down.
It is you ever want a DS9 movie, this is the DS9 movie.
Yep.
It is so fucking good.
There's no reason it couldn't have been a movie.
I thought if there were anyone from the TNG crew who belonged on Deep Space, it was definitely Worf. And I thought there was a lot of stuff we could do with Worf, and we wound up doing many things, including making him a husband and a widower and all kind of things that turned out to be great.
It was an interesting experience because that was something that I think really came from Rick and Ira. The studio wanted to sort of make people resample the show. They felt like, let's give people a reason to tune the show back in. It's a great show. We want people to check it out. And the solution that Rick and Ira came up with was, let's bring on Worf.
And I remember watching it when I was a kid and loving it. I couldn't believe how cool this episode of Star Trek was, because Star Trek didn't do these kind of episodes. It was epic in scope in a way that, like, only the pilot of the show had been to this point. I love Way of the Warrior. If I have to pick just one, it's that. But, bro, I have to throw 2 others in here. To the Death, which might be the best single Jem'Hadar episode.
Okay.
Fucking love it. And the apotheosis of O'Brien Must Suffer. Hard Time. How could you leave Hard Time off your list? Fucking masterpiece of O'Brien suffering, bro.
It always has a special place in my heart.
Colm Meaney knocks that episode out of the park. He is so good in that. And the whole Julian trying to talk him down and the hallucinations. And dude, we're going to get into the subject. Strangely enough, this is going to be a recurrent theme in DS9. The subject of trauma. And the long-term effects of trauma, which is, you have to expect that was something that was going to happen in Deep Space Nine once the writers gave themselves over completely to serialized storytelling. Because in an episode of TNG or Voyager or whatever, you can go to the foreign fucking anomaly planet, right? The anomaly of the week, and everyone can get fucked with. And then at the end, you wave the plot device wand, and everybody goes on their merry way, and there's no long-term side effects. And Star Trek had been like that for a long time. It's a syndicated show. It is kind of strange to me, by the way, as a total aside. Voyager's not syndicated. And yet it is one of the least serialized Star Trek shows ever made.
Yeah,
it's fucking crazy. They actually had a network. They had a home. They could have done serialized storytelling, and they fucked it up. They lapsed into that TNG territory, only not as good as TNG at all. Serious, like half-assed TNG.
Imagine TNG Season 7 But it's the whole
It's
series.
the whole show. But let's not fucking sully this discussion with talk of Voyager. At least Enterprise eventually got that right. Enterprise got into the serialized stuff and then got really, really good. But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about season 4. You can see it in the episodes that you rattle off here, dude. Like, even the duds. And there was a brief period at the, 3/4 mark, I want to say, in season 4, where we got, 3 bad episodes in a row. And they weren't even, offensively bad. But let's talk now about what our least favorite episodes are of season 4. There aren't a lot to choose from.
Yeah.
Oh, hit me with yours.
Oh, boy. Out of pure principle, probably bar association.
Oh, man.
And you probably know why.
Oh, God. It's funny. It doesn't even work that well as a Ferengi episode. It's not that funny. So it's it can't play to the humor. And then it's got this unctuous kind of, not even pro-labor, but pro-communist kind of message under it. And it's you can tell the writers were so painfully rooted in Hollywood. They were they hadn't been to a cocktail party where people hadn't been quoting Marx in fucking years.
You fucking quote Marx at me, you are immediately at the bottom of the list.
Literally. Rom quoting Marx, which is unfortunately the beginning of the end for this character having any kind of charm. By the end of this show, I've maintained it. Rom is one of the most insufferable characters on the show. He becomes kind of the Wesley Crusher of DS9. And it's a shame, because there's a sweet spot for him that I think we're still in, by the way. There's still some good Rom moments and episodes.
We'll get a couple more, definitely.
But the thing with him and Lita gets real cringe and stupid after a while. You kind of wish the writers would kind of put it in a shelf somewhere. And eventually there's a big development with him that we won't talk about. It's towards the end of the show, fortunately. But my least favorite, I could have easily gone with Bar Association. I'm going with Rejoined. Rejoined is cited as this landmark because of the lesbian kiss and the way that it was handled, but it really is one of the worst written episodes of this show. We talked about it when we were watching it. I remembered thinking it was okay as a throwaway, but it's it is painfully self-contained. There are no long-term consequences.
None.
It has no B-plot, so there's no reason to complain, to be invested in any way in, for example, if you had a B-plot where there was something going on with the Bajorans, or something that had to do with the greater macrocosm of the ongoing serialized plot of DS9, it could have redeemed it. But there's no B-plot, so it's just baby mama drama. It's just fucking Dax crushing on this old flame. We have no emotional context for why they love each other so much, too. There's no flashbacks. There's nothing to give you that emotional root. And so what you're left with at the end of the day is a really well-directed but pretty poorly acted. I mean, it gets very daytime soap opera in places. That's my main complaint with Rejoined. You get this very daytime soap opera sort of episode that just lies there. And then it has this big kiss, and I guess if you want to watch Terry Farrell kiss a chick, fucking walk don't run, or run don't walk, rather, to the fucking hand lotion store. But no, it doesn't really work on a dramatic level. It isn't particularly, they could have played it as a screwball romantic comedy or something, I guess. They even try and do that in places. It just doesn't work, man. And you have a guest star. This is another problem. It's a love episode where you only have any emotional investment in Dax, right? You don't care about the other person involved. So it's really it's half of a romance drama as far as the audience is concerned. Fucking no emotional stakes whatsoever. And the only person in the whole episode that you can really relate to, because he's actually speaking sense, is Cisco. Because he's warning her that it's fucking retarded what she's doing. Like, you're basically just getting caught up in this fucking schoolgirl nonsense. It's gimmicky. I don't think this episode even would have been produced if Ronald D. Moore didn't at the 11th hour say, let's make the dude a chick. Because that's literally what... It was originally supposed to be Dax and a dude. And then Ronald Moore came up at the 11th hour, oh, it'll be a chick, and we'll make it kind of a thinly veiled homosexual allegory.
How many times has this come up in media?
Motherfucker, it feels clunky, it feels tacked on, because it turns out that it was. I'm just not a fan of this episode. It's crazy. Back in the day, it didn't bother me that much. The homosexual aspect, honestly, is the least offensive aspect of it. It's badly written, and it's really badly acted in places. The only redeeming factor it has is Avery Brooks as a director. That's it. The only thing salvaging it, and that's because the way that he films it, it doesn't feel as exploitative as it could have.
Right. I think he actually had a hand in that.
He did. He took a direct hand in that. In fact, there was a bunch of, like, alternative lifestyle magazines and shit and reporters showing up on set, and Avery Brooks showed him the fucking door. He was like, no, you're not going to bother my actors. You're not going to turn this into a circus. We're going to keep this about the story. We're going to keep this about filming the episode. That's the only reason this is watchable. It's the only reason I didn't give this like a 1 out of 5.
What's extraordinary about it, you know, the love of your life, and somehow that love is taken away and you have a chance, another chance, you know, 150 years later, you know, to be together again. You know, it's an extraordinary story.
On my way home, I believe, I was driving away from Paramount, and I had this idea, and I called Renee and said, what if it's a woman? What if we make it that the host, that the Trill symbiote is now a woman, and Dax is still in love with it?
I thought it was important that we tell this story honestly and truthfully about love. And so it's not about sex or same gender or any of the above. Even though, obviously, in our world, that's what people, you know, started to look at. But, I mean, it was so important for me to tell that story and tell it honestly and truthfully, especially for the people who have suffered, you know, in our world, needlessly, because of love. I was adamant that we were not going to sensationalize this thing, this kiss. Because, again, I mean, you know, the kiss, well, for Star Trek, I suppose, or even at that time, you know, for television, you know, primetime television, it was a big deal.
It's not good. I think it is really a dud of an episode. It probably is an episode that's bad enough that it probably shouldn't have been produced. It should have been replaced with something else. I think
while we were discussing and reviewing the episode, we were even trying to come up with ways to improve it. And we were just like, hey, yeah, they could have done this, they could have done this. Maybe if they walk back this and just explain this a bit more. And yeah, I mean, when you have to put that much work into something, at that point, just toss it out.
Yeah, well, and they came close to throwing that episode out a number of times. And now, even though it still has most of the flaws that they were identifying early on, it's now an episode that a lot of people pretend is excellent because it has a lesbian kiss in it in the 90s. That's it. Let's be perfectly upfront and honest about that. This episode, if it doesn't have 2 WNBA season ticket holders macking in the middle of it, it probably isn't talked about today at all. And that's a good indication that there's less meat than on a fucking vegan's plate on this fucking plot. I am not a big fan of Rejoined. That would be my least favorite. As far as, like, runners-up, that one wasn't good. Of course, fucking Bar Association's pretty bad. I don't hate The Muse. It gets dumped on a lot by a lot of people. I absolutely hate it, but it's not as good as some of the others. The other really big dud in season 4, maybe you'll agree with me, Sons of Moog. I love Klingon episodes. That one sucked.
It's a downer.
It was not good. It's built around, kind of similar to the lesbian kiss, it's totally built around the shock moment of Worf killing his brother. That's it.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
If it doesn't have that moment, I don't think that episode even fucking gets made at all. I remember us just watching that being like, oh, this fucking eats. This is not good. But, bro, we just listed like, I don't know, 3 episodes and an arguable 4th that were even remotely subpar. Fuck. You compare that to season 1. You compare that to season 2. This fucking season has a shockingly high batting average.
Alan Moraine.
There is no Alan Moraine moment, I don't think, in this episode, unless that's some sort of fucking trill sex position. But how do you feel about the first episode? I think you can definitely judge a season by the debut and the finale.
Oh, it's got to be one of the best.
Yeah.
If you're just looking at starters and finishers, it starts strong and it ends strong. It starts with the Klingon stuff, ends with the Klingon stuff, and in between you've got a lot to do with the Dominion, with the Changelings, and you get a lot of great character development for just about everyone.
Yeah, put it this way. Way of the Warrior, a lot of people would argue, and credibly, is the best season premiere of the entire show. And one of the best in all of Star Trek. Broken Link is objectively one of the best season finales, in the whole show as well. Everybody remembers the moment where Odo is turned human. Everybody remembers that fucking twist.
Yep.
This is just a winner, but then when you place that in the greater context of right before Broken Link, you get The Quickening, which is one of the best, like, plague doctor kind of episode. Like, one of the best episodes of the season is a Dr. Bashir episode. Like, what the fuck? Where did that shit come from? And then right before that is For the Cause, which, God, we didn't even talk about fucking For the Cause. An incredible Maquis episode. This really sets the stage for Sisko's ongoing kind of Ahab obsession with getting Eddington, which I love. I love that shit. And when that finally comes to fruition, when they finally put the Maquis arc to bed, all this stuff is going to pay off in such a fucking huge way. I love where they wind up going with this stuff. So, season 4, would you say, before we move off of it, that it is as good as season 3? Better? You know, where does it sit in the sort of pantheon of seasons that we've watched so far?
The way I view it, it has been a steady climb. Yeah. I think every season so far has been better than the last.
Yeah. Which is not easy to do.
And I think season 5, think of all the things we have set up so far.
Yeah.
We've set up what potentially will become a war with the Dominion. We're definitely setting stuff up with the Klingons.
Yeah.
Love that ending in the Broken Link.
Yeah.
And there's just so much that's going to happen with the Maquis. That's going to be some of the juiciest storytelling.
Yep. Yep. And meanwhile, all the characters are deepening. One of the best episodes of the season we didn't even talk about, really, is Indiscretion, which deepens Gul Dukat in a huge way. And Gul Dukat has been a consistent highlight of this show when he does show up. Boy, he really, by season 4, he was in top flight, right? Like, Dukat was really one of the highlights of the show. Indiscretion, definitely a peak for him. Dude, we didn't even talk about fucking every season has to have the Ferengi episode. This one has 2. and one is an absolute festering turd, and that's Bar Association. But one of the best episodes of the whole show is fucking Little Green Men, which was earlier in the season, and the fucking Ferengi are the Roswell aliens, which is rather topical now with the fucking alien mummy in Mexico that looks like it's made out of fucking paper mache. But, yeah, like, dude, in terms of seasons to this point, you can see, I think it tracks, dude, as far as what you're saying. It absolutely, in every appreciable way, the Ferengi episode, better than last season's, right? The season premiere, better than last season's. Arguably, the season finale, better than last season's. I do like season 2's finale a little better than both of these, though, because the kamikaze attack from the Jemadar is fucking classic.
Yeah.
But, and again, that's one of the reasons season 2 is my absolute favorite of the show. But I have to agree, on the whole, I think 4 is just emblematic of the fact that every single season they seem to get more and more comfortable. And it's kind of wild to think that somewhere between season 2 and 3... Avery Brooks almost left the show because he was so dissatisfied with what his character was doing. Here, man, in this season, you can see Sisko has been given so much more to do. He's now directing episodes, some of the better episodes. He's saved an absolute turd of an episode we were talking about earlier. You know, he's found a home here, and it's interesting because Avery Brooks said the reason that he didn't leave the show was, I wanted to set an example for my son, that once you commit to do something, you do it. You follow through. You follow through on your commitments. You don't just quit. And I, for one, am extremely glad that he stayed. Rules of Engagement, which is an underrated Klingon episode. It's a courtroom drama, and he basically plays advocate for Worf, right? And some of the best shit is just Avery Brooks hamming it the fuck up, right? In the courtroom yelling scenes and shit. Dude, he's absolutely fantastic in that. Who are the highlight characters for you this season?
Oh, I mean, that's kind of cheating. I mean, Avery Brooks, I mean, my God.
Right.
Let's put him off to the side, because we know he's the champion.
I mean, look, we introduced Wei Yun this season.
That's true. And he gets a lot of work done. Not as Wei Yun, but of course I'm talking about Jeffrey Combs.
Right.
He comes back as Wei Yun. He comes back as Brunt FCA.
Yes!
And, who besides Sisko? I of course, I'm a sucker for Miles O'Brien.
Yep.
He got a lot of great stuff to do in his little prison cell. And, of course, all the stuff with him having to deal with Keiko's pregnancy.
Yeah.
Which is something we didn't talk about, how that happened, and then it sort of set up what happens with Kira.
Yeah, how Dr. Bashir apparently doesn't believe in space prophylactics. So for those who don't know, Alexander Siddig and Nana Visitor, Dr. Bashir and Kira, respectively, started bumping uglies during... Actually, we didn't even talk about this episode. One of the standout episodes of this show is Our Man Bashir, right? And in Our Man Bashir, they started fucking. Bro, that's the 9th episode of the season? Something like that?
Oof, boy, that man does not waste time.
He does not waste time. She is pregnant within, 12, 13, 14, 15 episodes, something like that. Like, down the road. By the end of this season, she is preggers, and it's all his fault. So they actually have to write into the show that she's going to have Keiko's pregnancy transplanted into her. A little bit one life to live. But, you can understand. They had to work with it. They didn't want to have her, posing behind potted plants and shit to cover her baby bump.
Right.
So it's a creative way to deal with it. It does lead to some interesting kind of drama and stuff later, especially with the whole Odo thing being a factor. And Shakar is still in the mix keep in mind. He winds up coming more into play in season 5 a little bit. I guess he stopped fucking Beverly Crusher as a goddamn ghost.
Never gonna get over it.
But but I think my favorite character of the season, I think the one who got to develop the most, maybe is Odo from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Right from beginning to end. Think about it. Worf is introduced, and he immediately butts heads with Worf. And the Worf-Odo conflict over the course of season 4 is some of the best fucking stuff. The scene where, and I forget exactly which episode it is, where Worf is criticizing station security. And Odo's like, Worf says something to the effect of, "This would never have happened on the Enterprise." And Odo's like, "Oh, really, bitch? Let me count the ways." And he rattles off incident reports from the USS Enterprise. And Worf basically goes, "Yeah." Because that's all he can fucking say. So, right from the beginning, the conflict with him and Worf is a great ongoing element where they kind of have a respect for one another, but they are definitely in conflict. And then, of course, Odo gets to develop them. You get the shit with Odo kind of pining after Kira. I love that the writers showed restraint in that, so we don't get Emodo. And then, by the end of the season, of course, we have the great big revelation, the huge transformative, well, literally physically transformative, the fact that he turns into a human, which is an interesting inversion of, like, Data. I mentioned this during that episode. It's an interesting inversion of Spock and Data, where Spock is a half Vulcan who wants to become more Vulcan. Fucking Data is Pinocchio. He's a fake boy who wants to be a real boy.
Right.
And Odo's the opposite. Odo wants to be more like a changeling. That's it. He doesn't want anything to do with humanity, really, at all, except that he wants some Bajor pussy. That's about it. Other than that, he has no fucking interest in humanoids whatsoever. And so him being sentenced to live as a solid is actually a really bitchin' and arresting moment that bears some pretty significant fruit. This remains the case for a good long while into season 5, by the way. This is long-term effects. So I would say my favorite character, and probably the character who grew the most over the course of season 4, would be Odo. What is your rating for season 4 out of 5?
Honestly, if we're going by good episodes versus bad episodes, we're looking at a solid, I want to say 4.5. Like, you're looking at that ratio, that's pretty damn good.
Yeah. I think I would settle at a solid 4. I think there's some duds. I think they're bad enough duds that it pulls the rating down just a smidge. And the reason why I don't go higher on that is I know how much better what's coming is, right? Like, I know the heights to which DS9 is going to ascend. So I want to give a little bit of headroom there. I would say 4 out of 5. Believe it or not, folks, this show gets even better. If there's a theme to season 4, I completely agree. It is the solidifying, the foundation season. It's the moment we establish the batting average of this show. Very few duds in a season. Absolute top shelf, serialized Star Trek to the nth degree. But folks, it's not over yet. We are plummeting dick deep into season 5. Until that time, I am Captain Fist for Lieutenant Commander Gell. Engage.
Captain, I would think long and hard before answering.
I don't recall asking your opinion, Quark.
Well, maybe you should. I mean, who knows more about women than me?
Everyone.